It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.
This podcast is part of E2C Network, where we share the whole Auburn experience.
Hello and welcome to War Horses, the only college equestrian podcast that had an existential crisis this past weekend. I'm your host, Auburn Elvis. Let's talk about some college equestrian. All right, well, we'll get right into the show. First, we're going to start with some meet recaps. Our first meet to look at, TCU at South Dakota State. So this one was on Friday. The prediction for this meet was TCU 11, South Dakota State 8. Let's see what really happened. Fences went 3-2 for TCU. Flat went 4-1 for TCU. Horsemanship went 3-2 for TCU, and reining went 4-1 for TCU. Add that all up, and that meant the final score 14-6 in favor of TCU. For TCU, this is a pretty good road win. This is about what the stats predicted, and it ended up happening. For the home team, you know, sometimes when you're going up against a big school, even when you're riding at home and you got the advantages, you're going to get outridden, and that kind of happened here. All right, so the next meet to look at is Delaware State versus TCU. This was a neutral site meet, and here's how things really went. Fences was a 2-2 tie. Flat was a 2-2 tie. Horsemanship went 3-2 for TCU, and reining went 2-1 for TCU. That made the final score 9-5 TCU. So this one was actually a little bit closer than the stats predicted, but still decent win for TCU. They went on the road. That's never easy. They got the neutral site win here, so good job, Horned Frogs. Next meet to look at, Oklahoma State at Baylor. Now the prediction for this meet was Oklahoma State 10, Baylor 9. Let's see what really happened. Fences went 3-2 for Oklahoma State. Flat went 3-2 for Baylor. Horsemanship went 4-0 for Oklahoma State, and reining also went 4-0 for Oklahoma State. That made the final score Oklahoma State 13, Baylor 5. So yeah, this one was not very close. The prediction thought it was going to be neck and neck. Oklahoma State gets a big win in conference on the road, and yeah, they look to be the toast of the Big 12 there. So good job to the Cowgirls. For Baylor, you know, they had a shot, but they just didn't get enough points. So yeah, it's a bit of a disappointing season so far for the Bears, but they still got meets ahead of them. They got room for improvement. We'll see how things go. Next up, Delaware State at South Dakota State. The prediction for this was South Dakota State winning 9-8. Let's see what really happened. In fences, that went 5-0 for South Dakota State. On the flat, that went 3-2 for Delaware State. In horsemanship, that went 3-1 for Delaware State, and in reining, that went 3-2 for South Dakota State. That made the final score South Dakota State 11, Delaware State 8. So yeah, this was a pretty good home win for South Dakota State. They got the win against a ECAC team there. Delaware State, you know, you're going on the road. It did okay against TCU, did okay against South Dakota State, but still came up empty-handed. But still, it's a road meet. Those are tough. All right, over we go to Saturday. Auburn at South Carolina. Now, the prediction for this was South Carolina 9, Auburn 8. Let's see what really happened. So I'm going to slow down on this one because this was the one that made me rethink life and everything. Okay, so the meet started out with horsemanship and fences. Okay, those are Auburn's two strongest events. And in the matchups, it actually favored Auburn in those two. It favored Auburn 4-1 over in horsemanship and 3-2 in fences. Well, fences did go 3-2 for Auburn, but horsemanship was a 5-0 sweep for South Carolina. So that made the halftime score 7-3, and right there, Auburn was in big trouble, because that's their best, consistently, that has been their best event all year, and to not even get a single darn point, panic mode, panic time. Basically, the meet was essentially over at that point, especially when you consider that the two events coming up was flat and raining, and those are the two events that Auburn has not been stellar at. They've been up and down at. At home, they look great in those two, but on the road, they do not. Okay, and so in the second half, things kind of turned around a little bit. Now, in flat, South Carolina won that one 3-2, which was expected, but what was really unexpected was Raining went 4-0 for Auburn. So they got the dirty sweep there. That really closed the gap and made the final score South Carolina 10, Auburn 9. Now, what's very interesting is this was what the predicted, or essentially what the prediction said. The prediction was 9-8 and it ended up 10-9, so essentially the same thing. But what's really wild is just how disappointing this horsemanship score was for Auburn. This was, and I went back and I posted this on Instagram for y'all. With the stats going into this one, only one South Carolina rider has had a history of winning more than 50% of her rides. And all of Auburn's riders win more than 50%. And so, yeah, Auburn was favored in 4 of the matchups and got swept. It's crazy that happened. Especially, you look at there's one rider for South Carolina, I think she was averaging around 38% winning percentage. And she went up against Auburn's best rider, who was winning about 76, 77, somewhere in there. And, of course, South Carolina girl won. So just a huge upset there. And then that got followed up with almost as huge of an upset with the Auburn's Raining squad turning it around and winning 4-0, because South Carolina has a good Raining squad and Auburn has an inconsistent Raining squad. Well, they were on the ball and they almost won that during meet. Like, if that tie had gone Auburn's way, Auburn would have won the meet, because if they had tied overall, Auburn had more points in the tiebreaker. So yeah, this This was crazy. If you can't count on your best event being your best and your worst event being your worst, then oh my goodness, what are we even doing here? So I don't know what really happened. Maybe Auburn horsemanship was a little overconfident. Maybe they didn't spend as much focus on that going into this, and maybe they spent a ton of focus on Raining. Or maybe at halftime, maybe South Carolina eased up a little bit, and maybe Auburn hunkered down. Again, we don't know, but boy, oh boy, this really is a head scratcher. Now, it all averages out because the result ended up being pretty close to what the stats thought, but it did not happen in the way we thought it was going to go. So, Auburn fans, again, I talked about last week, all fears are rational. Be scared of everything. Be worried about everything. Don't take anything for granted. And this shows, don't take anything for granted, the good or the bad. Because you don't know what's going to happen. And, boy, what a takeaway. For South Carolina, great win for them. They've continued to beat Auburn at home for like 2-3 years now. So, they're looking good at home against Auburn. All right, we still got meets to talk about. Texas A&M at Georgia. The prediction for this was Georgia 14, Texas A&M 4. Let's see what really happened. Fences went 3-2 for Georgia. Flat was a 2-2 tie. Horsemanship went 4-1 for Georgia. And Raining went 3-2 for Georgia. So that made the final score Georgia 12, Texas A&M 7. So good home win for Georgia. It wasn't quite as big as what the stats suggested. So the Aggies did pretty good on the road. Good job to them. But Georgia still gets the win. And Georgia's looking good and solid and consistent. Auburn is not looking consistent. So yeah. But, Georgia's good. They're good. Texas A&M is not bad either. So, no team in the nation is going to be able to go into Georgia this year and beat Georgia. So, Texas A&M did about as good as anybody could expect. So, there you go. Next meet to look at, Minnesota Crookston at Fresno State. The prediction for this was Fresno State 16, Minnesota Crookston 4. Let's see what really happened. Fences went 4-1 for Fresno State. Flat went 4-1 for Fresno State. Horsemanship went 3-1 for Fresno State. And Raining was a 5-0 sweep for Fresno State. That made the final score 16-3 Fresno State. So this one pretty much went as expected. Minnesota Crookston being on the road like that, they weren't going to get more than a handful of points, and they did not. Yeah, that's pretty much what happened. Good solid win for Fresno State. They beat a smaller team like that, and good win. And moving right along, Minnesota Crookston had to go over to UC Davis. The prediction in this one was UC Davis 13, Minnesota Crookston 4. So let's see what really happened. Fences was a 5-0 sweep for UC Davis. Flat went 4-1 for UC Davis. Horsemanship was a 2-2 tie. And Raining went 5-0 for UC Davis. That made the final score UC Davis 16, Minnesota Crookston 3. So here again, the stats were pretty accurate. Actually, it was a little bit more of a blowout than the stats predicted, but you get that sometimes. And yeah, like I said, pretty much the same recap as the one before this, where Minnesota Crookston, they're a smaller school, they're still building their program, and yeah, they kind of got knocked around there by UC Davis. Nice little win for UC Davis. This keeps them in the front in the driver's seat for the ECAC championship. So yeah, they're looking good. Well, that is our final meet to recap. Now let's see what the impact that had on this week's the official Auburn Elvis College Equestrian Rankings. All right, first we're going to do the dual discipline team. We've got a new number one. Number one is Georgia. So I'm moving Georgia up. They are a tiny bit better than Auburn right now, but really these two teams could be both tied for number one, but I'm going to bump Georgia up to number one this week. That means at number two, we have Auburn. I slid the Tigers down after a 1-point road loss. Probably not too fair, but because we did expect them to lose on the road, and they performed as expected. But we're going to see what Georgia does at South Carolina next. If the Bulldogs get hammered at Blythe, maybe Auburn will jump back up into number one. But if things go as expected, I think Georgia might hold on to that. But we'll see. They're number one right now. Auburn's number two, and number three is Oklahoma State. Yeah. Now, this one, I don't know. I think about this one a lot. Oklahoma State has the third best record right now, but it's pretty much because they have played the softest schedule of any of the top teams. The Cowgirls did not schedule any SEC teams this season, so it's really tough to say they're as good or better than South Carolina right now. And number three is probably the ceiling for them with this schedule, because you can't really say that a team that has not ridden against another team in the top six is just easily one of the top two teams. You haven't ridden against any of the best teams. By comparison, Auburn has ridden 5 meets against teams in the top six. Georgia has ridden 4 meets against those teams. South Carolina has ridden 7 times against the top 6 teams. So, you know what? I'm going to move Oklahoma State back down. Yeah, this is an embarrassing resume for them to have halfway through the season. So shame on whoever created this week schedule. You should schedule some SEC teams. This is not a very good schedule for a perennial power like this. So, yeah, Oklahoma State is now number 4. And that means number 3 is South Carolina. The Gamecocks are 7-4, but they've had as tough a schedule as anybody in the nation, certainly tougher than Oklahoma State's, and their resume deserves recognition, so the Gamecocks are number 3. All right, that means Oklahoma State's number 4. Talked about them. On we go to number 5, SMU. The Mustangs are going to move up to number 5, and if they keep on winning, then they might even leapfrog Oklahoma State, because SMU has a much tougher schedule than Oklahoma State does. So, yeah, okay. Down we go to number 6, Texas A&M. The Aggies are having a good season, not a great season. They're a strong team, but they lost both of their Georgia meets, both at home and on the road, and that kind of shows that they're probably not as good as those top teams. And SMU is looking really good right now, especially because they're not going on the road as much. And so, yeah, I'm going to slide the Aggies down to number 6. Number 7 is TCU. They picked up a pair of decent road wins. Well, one was a road win, one was neutral site. But they really need to beat some more teams currently above them in the rankings if they want to move up any. Number 8 is Fresno State. The Bulldogs are about to face a pair of really tough road meets. If they win just one of those, they're probably going to rise up in the rankings. So Fresno State's at number 8 right now. Number 9 is Baylor. The Bears only have that one home win over Fresno State, so they're just outside the top 8. But if they put on a strong finish to the season, that could be enough to slide them back up into that group of teams that would be headed to Ocala. So we'll see. And number 10 is UC Davis. Hello. The Aggies continue to look good against their fellow ECAC teams, but they have a home win at the beginning of the season over TCU, but that was such a long time ago. They really need to run the table and win the ECAC if they want to have a chance to get back to Ocala. All right, over we go to the single discipline rankings. There are, again, no changes this week because we didn't have any meets last week for these teams. So just a quick recap. I'm just going to run through it. We won't even do the animal sounds on this. Lynchburg is number 1. Number 2 is Dartmouth. Sacred Heart is 3. Number 4 is Sweetbriar. Bridgewater comes in at number 5. Number 6 is College of Charleston. Berry is number 7. Number 8 is Swanee. And number 9 is Centenary. So those are your single discipline rankings. And we've got some single discipline meets coming up, so we're probably going to see some changes in those coming up next week. Speaking of which, let's look into the future with some meet previews. Okay, the first meet to take a look at, Bridgewater College at Centenary. So I put in the stats, ran the numbers, and here's what the stats say should happen. Fences is predicted to go 3-1 for Bridgewater, and flat is predicted to go 3-2 for Bridgewater. If all that does happen, that would make the final score Bridgewater 6, Centenary 3. So even though the Cyclones would have a home meet, the stats really like Bridgewater, and 6-3. That I don't know if it's going to be quite that much of a win for the Eagles there. I mean, Centenary is not too bad, and with them hosting, I don't know. I think that's going to be closer. We'll see. Next meet to look at, TCU at Oklahoma State. Fences is predicted to go 3-2 for Oklahoma State. Flat is predicted to go 3-1 for Oklahoma State. Horsemanship is predicted to be a 2-2 tie, and Reigning's predicted to go 4-0 for Oklahoma State. If all that does happen, that would make the final score Oklahoma State 12, TCU 5. So being at home, that's going to help the Cowgirls, and I could see that. I could see an Oklahoma State winning 12-5. In a home meet against their closest rival in the Big 12. Yeah. I mean, heck, it's not an SEC team, so sure, go ahead, Cowgirls. Run up the score. Do whatever you want. All right, next meet to look at, Georgia at South Carolina. Fences is predicted to be a 2-2 tie. Flat is predicted to go 3-1 for South Carolina. Horsemanship is predicted to be another 2-2 tie. And Reining is predicted to go 3-1 for Georgia. Uh-oh. If all that happens, that would make the final score an 8-8 tie. So we like to give the tiebreaker to the home team, so that would mean South Carolina would win in a tiebreaker. We'll see if that really happens. Georgia's on a roll right now, but South Carolina's good at home. Although Auburn did almost beat them if they had just a little bit better performance in horsemanship. But of course, they normally have a little bit worse performance in reining, so I guess it all averages out. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Sacred Heart at Charleston. Fences is predicted to go 3-2 for Charleston. Flat is predicted to go 3-2 for Charleston. If all that happens, that would make the final score Charleston 6, Sacred Heart 4. So the Pioneers are having a really good season, but a lot of that's because they've been riding at home. Now they got to go on the road, and I think this seems accurate. I could see Charleston getting the 6-4 win being at home like that. We'll see what really happens. Next up, SMU at Texas A&M. Fences is predicted to go 4-1 for Texas A&M. Flat is predicted to be a 5-0 sweep for Texas A&M. Horsemanship is predicted to go 3-2 for SMU, and reining is predicted to be go 3-2 for Texas A&M. If all that happens, that would make the final score Texas A&M 12, SMU 5. Wow, okay, this is a bit one-sided. Now it's at Texas A&M, and sometimes those meets can really go heavily for the home team like this. I mean, I could see Texas A&M winning. I just don't think it'll win by that much. But we'll see. The stats like A&M. All right, next meet and the final meet to look at, Dartmouth at Charleston. Okay, so Dartmouth is another one of those teams where they only rode at home in the fall. Now they got to go on the road. How are they going to do? Well, the stats predict that Fences will go 3-2 for Charleston and that Flat will go 3-1 for Charleston. If all that does happen, that would make the final score Charleston 6, Dartmouth 3. So this would be a bit eye-opening, especially because Charleston's on down there in the rankings right now, but they did go on the road a lot. I think Dartmouth is number 1 in the NCEA rankings. They're the defending national champion. They haven't lost any, but they've been on the road. They've been at home. So this would kind of shake up the NCEA rankings if this happened. It wouldn't shake up my rankings that much because these teams are closer in my rankings than they are in the NCEA rankings. So this is believable. 6-3 for Charleston. I could see that. Okay. Well, those are all the meets. Now, I talked a little bit about this with the existential crisis and why do we do all this? Some of y'all were actually like, well, if the results can be that different from the stats, why do you even do it that way? Well, I think my response was something like, what else am I supposed to do? Use the force? I mean, a lot of people will say, well, okay, which team do I root for? Okay, let's predict that team wins. And that's the beginning and the end of it for them. Me, on the other hand, I'd rather rather use like data and stats, and so that's what I do. I track the stats and I say, okay, well, if a rider tends to win, if she's won mostly in the past, she's probably going to keep winning. Now, there will always be outliers on that, and the past is not a perfect predictor, but I feel like, hey, we got nothing else to go on, so yeah, let's use stats. And this past week with the Auburn ones, overall the stats did sort of work out, but yeah, in the individual events, the results came out of left field on that one. Hey, what else are we going to go on? The value of doing this is it's really hard to think and say, okay, when these two girls face off against one another, if one of them's going to probably win, unless it's a tie, but let's assume, it's not a tie, somebody's going to win. Well, what are we supposed to think about that win? Was it supposed to happen? Was it an upset? What is the perspective on that? And I think that's what the value of the stats give us. They can show us that, for example, in that horsemanship case with Auburn and South Carolina, the results were the complete opposite of the stats. We don't know why that happened, but we do know that the ramifications of that are that South Carolina really overperformed and Auburn really underperformed. And if you are a fan of South Carolina, you got to be really proud about that. If you're a fan of Auburn, you got to be really worried about that. But then in that same meet, almost the reverse happened with reining. Reining has for many meets been an albatross around Auburn's neck. Well, not in this meet. This meet, reining stole the show. They were the most successful event Auburn had that day. And so if you're an Auburn fan, you know what? You can be proud of them. Again, you're not happy with the loss, but you're happy that reining showed they could go out and get points, and they made a game of it. But again, if you're a South Carolina fan, you might look at that and say, wait a minute, our reining squad, at least statistically, historically, has been better than Auburn's reining squad. What happened? So again, all fears are rational. Not sure what you're going to get. The stats help us to a point. We don't know until everybody gets out there and actually competes. And that's the whole point. You got to go out there and you got to get it done. Sometimes you go out there, you try your best, and things just don't go your way. There's a football coach, and Auburn fans know where I'm going with this. There's a football coach at Auburn, Pat Dye. His first season at Auburn, he had a young team that went over to Tennessee. Tennessee was predicted to win that game, and it came down in the fourth quarter. Auburn was winning, and then Tennessee came and scored and ended up winning the game right at the end there. Auburn in the locker room, they're all downcast, dejected, and Pat Dye, the coach, he gets up and he says these words that are pretty famous to an Auburn fan. And he basically says, look, some days you go out there, you lay your guts on the line, and you come up empty-handed, and there ain't a damn thing you can do about it except go out there and lay your guts on the line again and again and again. And if you do that, you'll build a foundation that we can live a long time on here at Auburn. And I think that's the mentality that anybody needs to take when things don't go your way. So these athletes, whether you're somebody over at Minnesota Crookston who you're only getting 1 or 2 points in a meet like this, you're going on the road, it feels like, goodness, why am I doing all this struggle? Well, you're doing the struggle in part because you're building a foundation and you're going out there every day and you're giving it everything you got. For these reining riders over at Auburn, I'm sure they're getting tired of every week where I'm talking about, reining is kind of the anchor to the Auburn boat here. Well, this past week they weren't the anchor; they were the sails. They put all the energy into the ship. It was everybody else that kind of didn't do as well. So there is a payoff if you keep working, keep going out there, putting your guts on the line, keep moving ahead. Good things are going to happen, and maybe the good things are it'll show up in the scoreboard, but maybe it won't. The neat thing about college athletics is that it ends up being a laboratory for a lot of the principles that you could take with you and apply in your real lives. And a lot of you riders, things ain't always going to be easy. There's going to be trials and hardships. Some of y'all are going to deal with tragedies, deaths, sicknesses, problems with marriages or jobs and all this stuff. And it's going to be tough. It's going to be way tougher than if some judge only gave you a 72 when you feel like you deserved a 75 on your score or whatever. It's going to be a lot tougher than that. But these principles that you're learning in college about keep on working, lay your guts on the line, if you learn those here, they're going to serve you down the road. And I think that's the real goal of athletics in college. So that's our final thoughts for the week. Just keep on laying your guts on the line and doing it again and again and again. Well, that's all for this episode. I am your host, Auburn Elvis. Thank you very much for listening, and War Horses.
Thank you for tuning in to today's episode on the E2C Network. On your way out, I want to remind you to stop by e2cnetwork.com. It's your one-stop shop for all our content across our podcast, YouTube channel, and much more. To stay up to date with us, make sure you're following social media accounts such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. While our content here may always be Auburn sports heavy, if it's orange and blue, it's what we do. War Eagle.